So we left off in chapter 12 of John, and I'm going to pick up there where Jesus had just said, if I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to myself. And at verse 33, it says, he was saying this to indicate the kind of death by which he was to die. It says, the multitude therefore answered him, we have heard out of the law that the Christ is to remain forever, and how can you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man? So they had heard, of course, the Messiah is going to sit eternally on the throne of David. He would be the king that would fulfill the promise to David's seed. And so he's going to live forever. So they're saying, how can you say he'll be lifted up? How can you say he's going to die, be crucified, when he's going to live forever? And of course, and in that season, in that time, everybody had pretty much missed the whole Isaiah 53 prophecy about there's going to be one who has to be wounded and bruised for our transgressions and sins, and he has to die for us and be crushed by the Father in order that our sins can be accounted for. And so they had missed that, and so of course that's a question that's on their mind. How can you say you need to be lifted up when you're supposed to live forever if you're the Messiah? And of course that's answered through the rest of this gospel and into the rest of the New Testament. So John 13, there was at the end of John 12, it's good to read all of those things. I'm skipping over some of it. A lot of Old Testament passages are fulfilled as you come through this section of Scripture, and so it's good to read those and see how Jesus was the fulfillment. As we've looked at this whole study, we've looked at the Bible and showed how the whole Bible is Christocentric. It's centered on Jesus. It's about Him. Somehow the focus, all the things that are taking place, all of it relates to Him in some way. And as we go through the Gospels, there's a lot of quotes of the Old Testament just to kind of show how that some of those passages fit in. So chapter 13 begins with what's called the Lord's Supper in a lot of Bibles, and it was that last Passover season that Jesus was going to eat with His disciples. And of course, the Passover was a celebration of the time when the lamb was sacrificed in Egypt, and the blood was put on the doors, and anywhere the blood was at, the spirit of death passed over them, and they were saved from death by the blood. And so they're eating this Passover meal together. And during that time, Jesus takes a towel and wraps Himself and begins to wash the disciples' feet. And in verse 13, he explains Himself, and He says, "You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am." There's another I am. But if I then, the Lord and the teacher, washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. So He's kind of giving the whole concept here of, the kingdom authority is different. It's not just the rulers in the kingdom don't just sit on a throne and just point and tell everyone what to do. It's a servant leadership, a servant authority that the greatest among you is as your servant. He goes on in the same discourse here in chapter 13 when they're getting ready for the Passover meal. He says, I do not speak, he says, well, I'm going to pick up there. I do not speak of all of you. I know the ones I have chosen, but it is that the Scriptures may be fulfilled. He who eats my bread has lifted up his heel against me. So he says, I'm not talking about all of you, but there's somebody here that's actually going to betray me. He says, from now on I am telling you before it comes to pass, so that when it does occur, you may believe that I am, or I am He. I mean, here it is. I mean, so consistent through here. And here he's declaring ahead of time, and he's saying, I am, and I'm telling you ahead of time so you'll know, and I'm telling you that someone's going to turn against me, not someone in this group. And they're all pretty troubled about that, of course. And of course, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't think I'm going to do it, but is it me? Wow, who is it? And it doesn't seem like it could be anybody. We see that Jesus predicts who it is. In verse 21, when Jesus had said this, He became troubled in spirit and testified and said, truly, truly, I say to you that one of you will betray me. And the disciples were looking at each other, wondering who is it. And then it says in verse 26, this is the one for whom I shall dip the morsel and give it to him. So when He dipped the morsel, He took it and gave it to Judas. It's amazing to me that nobody still realizes He says that, He does that, and nobody really knows. It's like they don't pick it up. They still don't know. In verse 27, after the morsel, Satan then entered into him. Jesus therefore said to him, what you do quickly. Now those, in verse 28, now no one of those reclining at the table knew for what purpose He had said this to him. And He just explained it. Sometimes it's amazing how dull we can be when the things are right out there in front of us, but we still don't understand. Now, I think to really understand this fully, the morsel, and in the King James it says the sop, and of course, I know in the South, sop, you take bread and you sop up the gravy and you eat it. Well, that's not what this is at all. It's not that. The sop was actually a green vegetable that was dipped in salt water, and it was a picture of when Israel came through the Red Sea and they got to the other side and the new life that was ahead of them. The green vegetables represented that new life. So it'd be parsley or celery or something like that, some green vegetable. And so they dip it in there. And so it's interesting that Jesus was offering this to Judas when he betrayed him. It's like he was dipping this part that represented of passing through the Red Sea, getting to the other side to have this new life. And it was at that time that Judas sealed the deal in his heart that he was going to deny Jesus and get the 30 pieces of silver. So at that point, Judas leaves. Jesus begins to teach a little bit more. And he in verse 34, he says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And so that's a key theme throughout this, the scriptures too. And here Jesus says, my new commandment is just love one another like I've loved you. And if you do that, you know what? If we're going to do that, we would fulfill all of the law. You don't have to worry about going through all the different things and did I do this and this and this? And that's not about that. When we have a heart of love, love doesn't do evil. We see that in other places. Love's not going to break the law. Love is going to fulfill the law. Loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, that's going to fulfill all the law. So verse 36, we're moving on. Jesus has been talking about, his going away and all of this kind of thing. And Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered, "Where I go, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow later." Peter said to him, "Lord, why can I not follow you right now? I will lay down my life for you." And Jesus answered, "Will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, a cock shall not crow until you deny me 3 times. Jesus says, "Peter, you say you'll lay down your life for me. But I'm telling you, before you hear this cock crow 3 times, you're going to deny me 3 times." So it gets to chapter 14, and what we miss here oftentimes because of the chapter break, we miss the flow here. And Peter's just been told he's going to deny Jesus, and then chapter 14 verse 1 says, "Let not your heart be troubled." So it's like, oh wow, really? Right after you're going to deny, it says, "Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places," or mansions. "If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way where I am going." And once the disciples are confused, they say, "We don't know where you're going. How do we know the way?" And then he says in verse 6, another classic, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except by me." So we see this theme continuing on here, but Jesus is also trying to reassure them. Even in, he just told Peter, "You're going to deny me," and then the next thing he's saying to the whole group is, "Don't let your heart be troubled. You're going to deny me. I know you're going to turn on me. You're not going to deny even knowing me, but don't worry about it. Don't be troubled about that." And he explains once again that he is the way. And the disciples, in verse 8, Philip says, "Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us." And Jesus said to him, "Have I been so long with you, and yet you have not come to know me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. How do you say, 'Show us the Father'?" And once again, that follows really in the theme of John, the whole gospel. Jesus is this perfect demonstration and revelation of the Father. He is the I am in flesh. He is the I am come to earth. We saw that the book of John starts with, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." That powerful declaration, and all through is the confirmation in many different ways of how Jesus is the I am. He's God in the flesh. And here he tells Philip, "If you've seen me, Philip, you've seen the Father."